morning, students. Welcome to the IGCSE online sessions. I'm Mr. Charles, and this is the first lesson of week 6. Please go to your course book, page 168, Mail Online, Kiki, the icon of hope in the rubble. Let's read together. No Hollywood director could have improved on the scene that was splashed across the pages of this and just about every other newspaper 24 hours ago. No reader could have turned the page without pausing, smiling, perhaps even shedding a tear. That one paragraph summed up the horror and, yes, the hope of what was befallen Haiti. The crushed masonry that formed the backdrop illustrated the power that created this tragedy. The determination of the rescuers who have labored so mightily for so long was there too, sweat creasing the dust that lined their faces after their heroic efforts to find another survivor. At the center of the picture, a little boy called Kiki. He is 7 years old and he is beaming, his crooked tooth exposed in a smile as wide as his outstretched arms. His huge brown eyes sunk deep into his face tell of the suffering he must have endured since his world came crashing down on him 8 days earlier. But the smile overshadows everything. It is directed at a stick-thin woman reaching out to him, his mother. We cannot see her face, but we can see the faces of Kiki's rescuers, well-fed Americans who have left their comfortable homes in the world's richest country to dig for survivors on an earthquake in one of the world's poorest. Mostly they find only bodies, but not this time. And some of them, too, have their arms outstretched like Kiki. Others applaud. Some appear stunned by what they have done. As well they might be. This is a picture of joy. It is almost biblical, almost a resurrection scene or the raising of Lazarus that might have been painted by Caravaggio or Rembrandt. If there is one image that stays in our minds when the world's attention has moved on from Haiti, it will surely be this one. But why? Why should it not be the picture of another Haitian child also survived the earthquake? Her name is Wideline. There is no mother stretching out her arms to her. She died in the earthquake. And so did her father, and their home was utterly destroyed. Wideline's only possession is the red tartan dress she wears. When she was asked how she was feeling, she whispered only 2 words: hungry, scared. Wideline is infinitely more representative of what happened to Haiti than little Kiki. There are tens of thousands of children like her facing a bleak future, and they will need our help forever or for a very long time to come. But her picture will recede along with countless others like it. If not Wideline, why should the enduring image of the earthquake not be the doctors working against impossible odds to save the thousands who were so dreadfully injured? Paul McMaster, a British surgeon working with the heroic organization Médecins Sans Frontières, which is French for médecin, actually. Médecins Sans Frontières. This is a French for Doctors Without Borders. Described how one of the most urgent tasks facing him and his colleagues was finding somewhere to buy a new hacksaw. They needed to replace the one they had been using to amputate the crushed limbs of people who otherwise die from gangrene. They had used it so often it was no longer sharp enough. A picture of good, selfless men and women dedicated to relieving pain in the worst possible conditions should certainly live on, but it will not. Just as Weidlin and the surgeons will surely fade from our collective memories, so will the other images of the earthquake. The mass graves and bodies in the streets, the buildings crushed, and the looters being shot. But Kiki and his rescue will remain, and that, from one perspective, is wrong. The enduring image of the Vietnam War was also a small child, a 9-year-old Kim Phuc, fleeing naked from her village after a napalm attack, screaming in agony from the burns to her skin. It will remind us forever of the horror of the warfare waged with such vile weapons and of the suffering of the innocent, and we need to be reminded. Kiki's image represents at the deepest level victory over death. But Kiki was the exception in Haiti. Only a tiny handful have been rescued compared with the vast numbers who died under the rubble. Why should we focus so much attention on him at the risk of distorting in our memories of the real picture? I think it's because it answers a deep need in every one of us to believe in the nobility of humanity. It operates on so many different levels. On one level, we feel awe and humility at the love of a mother who simply refuses to abandon hope. Kiki's mother, Ina, was told there was no chance that her son and his sister, Sabina, who was buried with him, could have survived. It is rare for even strong adults to last for more than 3 or 4 days without a drop of water. And even if they had not had the life crushed out of them, it is virtually inconceivable that they could still be alive 8 days later. But Ina refused to accept the verdict of the experts, and she would not leave the ruin of her home. Her reward was, in one sense, a reward for everyone who saw that photograph, and that it is the essence of the autograph or the photograph of Kiki's rescue. That's why it has such a powerful resonance. It represents, at the deepest level, a victory over death. There is another way of putting it. It gives us hope. By John Humphrey from the Daily Mail newspaper. Difficult vocabulary. The rubble is the wreckage, is the destruction that was left by the earthquake, and it consists of big fragments of stones. The masonry is kind of building. Creasing, the wrinkling. So because so much dust was on the rescuers' faces, and when the drops of sweat came down from their foreheads, it came and made creasing, wrinkling paths on their faces. Biblical means it is from the Bible. And the raising of Lazarus, this is a miracle in the Bible where a dead person was brought back to life by Jesus Christ. Bleak means gloomy, dreary, sad. To recede, the picture will recede, the picture will disappear, it will fade away, it will no longer exist. To amputate is to cut limbs. So the doctor's hacksaw were now unable to, or was unable to perform well because it had cut so many limbs, or it had amputated so many limbs. The word amputate is strictly for humans. Vile is evil, very bad. Inna, the mother would not accept the verdict of the rescuers that told her her family would not exist anymore under the rubble. The verdict means judgment. Resonance is the echo. Puns in headlines. Some headlines, for them to be memorable, the writers, the bylines, choose to add puns to them. That is, a word that includes or a play on words where the word is substituted with a homonym. And the homonym is a word that has the same spelling or pronunciation but a different meaning. For example, doctor flew out to save patients. This is an article about a doctor flying to Australia, actually piloting, to save a patient. Mountaineer goes high on camera. This is an article about a mountaineer going very high on live TV. You see the homonym high and high, same pronunciation, different meaning. This is the pun. A pun to the ear. My ant is so small. This is an article about someone's aunt who got shrunk, who got very small now, let's say. Everybody loves to meet the pigs. This is the clearest pun in headline. That is a homonym here, meet, meat and meat, both to encounter and the actual flesh of an animal. They both have the same pronunciation, but different spelling and different meaning. And here it's an article about pigs. You see how most headlines that contain puns are of laughter causing and could encourage you to read on. For example, there was a headline about the Barcelona player that used to bite off other players while defending. His name I cannot recall at the moment. And the article, the newsline or the headline of this article about him read, "It had to be," or "It had to be you," or "It had to be Chew." "It Had to Be You" is a famous song in America that is a courtship between a man and a woman. So the playing on words here, "It had to be Chew" instead of "It had to be you," and then Chew, Chew, to mean that he is a great player. The headline or the article is about him being an awesome player, but through the means of chewing or biting other players' body parts. Reading exercise, page 170. First question. The article on pages 168 to 169 is about a natural disaster and how rescue workers are now trying to save people in appalling conditions. Why, in your opinion, has the journalist started with a reference to Hollywood? This is partially opinionated. Why would you talk about, or why would the writer bring out Hollywood in this rubble? But more or less, this is to recall movies, this to make you as a reader recall movies in your head and see that even Haiti disaster matched, if not topped, these movies. When you see a disaster happening, or when you want to report a disaster that already happened, you might refer to a movie because in the minds of your listeners or readers, you would create an image of something that is highly unlikely to happen, and then you push them or you surprise them on the actual event. That you remember this movie? I have a more real story to tell you. In our times, for example, the coronavirus, you have a movie, I think 2011, called Contagion. It almost more or less talked about how the events of the coronavirus might play out if an epidemic of a respiratory virus breaks out in the world. For me to write an article about coronavirus, I would start it with, remember the movie Contagion, for example, or remember the movie that talked about this respiratory disease. well, it came back to life or it came to life. This for me to set your expectations high and then exceed your expectation. Go even higher in them. Question 2. According to the journalist, the picture of good selfless men and women dedicated to relieving pain should certainly live on, but it will not. Why do you think he says that? This is also partially opinionated, but the thing is that people, most of people's memories at least, are short and tend to retain only positive pictures of good situations that give us hope. But we tend to forget the hardships and dangers that selfless people had done. Remember many hardships that you went through. I'm sure that your parents or your friends helped you a lot to get out of these hardships. But as time progresses, you will forget how they helped you, and you will only remember just the feeling that you got out of that hardship. A lot of the people that are around us, friends or family, that help us when we are down, we tend to forget their aid when we get out of the hardship, when we move past the difficult time. We just look back and say, yeah, this was a difficult time, and I'm glad it's over. But we tend to forget who really helped us and how much they suffered with us. Writer's craft, emotive language. Question 1. Select a word, a phrase, or a sentence from John Humphrey's article and discuss how and why the journalist had used it to evoke pity or sympathy. As we said, emotive language is highly used among news articles nowadays and even in our daily speech for you to persuade the reader to feel pity for you, to encourage you, to feel angry, to feel happy, to feel sad, any kind of feeling. The emotive, the sentimental language is used a lot. How did the writer use it? We have many examples. His huge brown eyes sunk into his face tell of the suffering, and bodies in the street, buildings crushed. The words here that are emotive, the huge brown eyes. This is a sign of beauty, right? When we say someone is beautiful, we tend to say that he has big eyes, he has wide eyes, right? Small eyes are usually associated or stereotyped that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but stereotyped big eyes with beauty. So the writer says his huge brown eyes and then sunk into his face to tell the suffering. The writer created an image through the emotive language to make you feel bad, to sympathize with Kiki. Bodies in the street, they don't belong there, right? Streets should not have bodies dead laying around. This also emotive language. And then buildings crushed. He didn't say fell down. He didn't say buildings fell down. He didn't say buildings are, let's say, erupted. He just said buildings are crushed. This is also for you to imagine a mighty entity that is a building and then it is to rubble, it is crushed. Question 2, look at the rhetorical questions in lines 43 to 45. Explain how and why the writer has used these questions to introduce information about a little girl named Widlin. You should remember first that one use of the emotive language is to help readers create images, as we said, that relate to the suffering, in the hopes of sympathizing or pitching in to help. But for Widlin, Humphrey has discussed how Kiki is used to evoke pity, the first rhetorical question, and then the girl Widlin introduced to us to draw us deeper into how media coverage is used to build certain emotions and perspectives. If the media wanted you to focus on merely sadness, merely death, only death and sadness, they would put a picture of Widlin. If the media wanted the focus or the attention on how the primary attention, the primary focus on how firefighters or rescuers are doing a great job, they were to put a picture of the rescuers. But the ultimate happy picture would be to include Kiki, because Kiki is rising from death, as the writer put it, the resurrection of Lazarus. She's rising from death and conquering, being victorious over death and living. This is a happy picture to introduce in order to evoke the emotions of we will live on, we will continue. What has become of Kiki in the Sun newspaper? School is a three-smile walk for Kiki. You see the pun here. The three-smile walk, the three-smile is a play on word instead of 3 mile walk. So it's not 3 mile walk for Kiki. It's him being smiling or smiled the whole time. Miracle boy Kiki, Joshin, beams with joy as he reads aloud at the front of the class, excitedly, showing some readers that he is now back at school. The brave 7-year-old whose smile lit up the darkness of Haiti's earthquake hell when he rescued or was rescued from his rubble, Tom, after nearly 8 days, couldn't stop grinning in his lessons. Virginia Wheeler in the Sun newspaper. What of this language? How similar or different is it from John Humphrey's article? What effect does the writer achieve through her choice of words in the introduction? How does she want us to react? Well, dears, she says smile. She says miracle and capitalized. She says his face beams with joy. And then the student reads aloud, which conveys confidence, right? The student is confident. Excitedly, the student Kiki, showing the readers that he is now back at school. Smile to light up the darkness. All of these words. The style of the article is different from of Humphreys, as Virginia uses uplifting and joyous vocabulary, denoting resurrection after defeat. 3 smile walk, miracle capitalized, beams with joy, excitedly, brave, and smile lit up darkness. All of these make us feel happy, makes us feel that something now is 180 degrees different from what it used to be. We're done for today. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and keep up the good work.